Welcome to Preparing for AI, the AI podcast for everybody, with your hosts Jimmy Rhodes and me, Matt Cartwright. We explore the human and social impacts of AI, looking at the impact on jobs, AI and sustainability, and most importantly, the urgent need for safe development of AI, governance and alignment. The world is my expense, the cost of my desire. Jesus blessed me with its future and I protect it with my fire. Welcome to Preparing for AI with me, Pam Saltman.
And me, Celia Utkova.
So this week we are going to be looking at UBI and alternative social models. So this is something that we've been kind of chatting about and really interested in for quite a while. I think my views have changed a little bit in terms of what I think could happen, what I think would be good to happen, and what I think could possibly, but hopefully won't happen. So should we kick off with UBI? Because it's like the one that I guess people know the most. We have mentioned it right back in quite early on, I guess, in the Utopia episode. We probably talked about it a bit, I think.
Yeah.
I feel like we've talked about it several times without really going into any detail. But let's kind of, first of all, just kind of introduce what UBI is. So I think when we first talked about this, we were talking about like the difference in UBI and NBI, like a national basic income. And I think actually like I'd misunderstood that a UBI universal doesn't actually necessarily mean for everybody in the world. It means for everybody within a context. So a national basic income would be a UBI. It would just be a kind of national UBI. But what it basically means is providing all the citizens of a territory, jurisdiction, country with a regular sum of money, which would be unconditional. It would alleviate poverty and provide some level of kind of financial security in an AI-driven future where automation has probably by that point, if not replaced, at least threatened, a lot of jobs. So people who argue for it would say it can stimulate the economy, it would increase consumer spending, it would reduce the need for complex welfare systems because you just have a pretty simple kind of payment. And then critics generally talk about disincentives to work, financial unsustainability. In an AI-driven future, I guess UBI would be seen as potentially being a kind of buffer about job replacement. So maybe it's a short-term model that kind of helps us transition to a different society where human labour's not central to economic productivity, but it would, I'm sure, be not without its bumps in the road, let's say. And we should probably say as well, like UBIs have been tried. They've been tried in the UK, in certain cities. So kind of small scale experiments. There was a guy I was on the AI governance course with who had written the kind of book on this from the Royal Society. So the thing that the UK's government had used in, I don't know where the trials were. They're in a selection of cities in the UK, but they have run trials. Finland has run the biggest trial I know of. So that was sort of tens of thousands of people. I don't know how long they ran it for, but it's one of these things that occasionally is in the news, a bit like 4-day working weeks. But I don't think many people have really thought about what it is actually, potentially going to mean.
Yeah, I mean, as Pam Saltman, we could also discuss universal basic compute. One of your suggestions from a while ago, I believe.
Well, I'm Pam Saltman. I'm not Sam Altman. There's no link between the two.
Sam
Altman's the devil.
I thought it was some sort of alter ego.
No. Pam Saltman is just what most people call me.
Oh,
my friends and family.
Yeah. So
when you make the inner circle, you can call me Pam as well.
Nice. So there's a bit you haven't talked about yet, which was the bit I was going to argue with. So I'm going to find it a little bit harder to sort of debate at the beginning of this episode.
You want me to go straight in with the with the big potential risk?
Well, the Wall-E argument, I think it is.
Okay.
But no, like I mean, just as a sort of like a brief sort of, I guess, opening statement about universal basic income. I genuinely think, and okay, maybe this is a bit out there, but universal basic income for me is about, it's the same thing as like any kind of social backstop, any kind of like social support and all the rest of it. And there are people in society that need that. And so UBI is an extension of that. It's like the next level of it, when robots take people's jobs, AI takes people's jobs, that kind of thing. But it's something that's been around for a very long time, actually. This concept of universal basic income. Like you say, it's been experimented with in the UK. Actually, the UK has a very good social support structure where people have benefits, right? And so, and there are a lot of people that would say that is a very good system. Now, okay, there are downsides to it, and you can see those downsides to it, and we can debate those downsides to it, which we'll do during this episode. But fundamentally, it's something that, if you really get down to brass tacks, it stops people becoming homeless and getting into like some pretty desperate situations. And so there are a load of massive upsides to these kinds of benefit systems that mean that, they avoid certain kinds of social unrest. They mean that people have a basic means of income that can, in the UK, you have like housing support, you have all these kinds of things. The downsides, obviously, are that people come to rely on them. People, for want of a better word, will just kind of bum about and be like, okay, well, I can just take my social services. And there are ways of abusing all these systems as well. But they're they're well-meaning systems. And I think that's kind of like where you get into the dichotomy with these kinds of things. I'm gonna reserve my kind of big argument for after you've done your next spiel. And so with that, I'll hand over to you.
Well, before I get onto that bit, because obviously I know the bit, because we started arguing about it this morning, and then I said stop because we were going to ruin the podcast by having the argument before we do it. But I think it was good that we're going to disagree on this. But before we get onto that, I think like fundamentally, I've been a big proponent of this for quite a long time, like well before AI, because I think it is potentially not only in terms of like as an eradication of poverty, but just as a way of simplifying like what is an incredibly complex and unfair system. So you look at a country like the UK, universal basic credit, is it called? Universal credit, sorry, not basic credit, universal credit. You've got quite a complex system. Wouldn't it be easier in a way? And actually, let's look back at like during COVID, the furlough scheme in the UK and the way they operated. In the US, they just gave people money, right? Mm-hmm. And it was a simpler way to do it. Just posted people. I mean, it's the US. They still give people fucking checks. So they're probably posting people a check there to go to cash in a bank that they couldn't go to. But anyway, the idea of just giving someone a sum of money. And there's a big thing in the sort of charity world about not donating to charities, but just giving people cash, because you give them cash, you empower them and enable them to do stuff. And, an argument would be, well, people are going to spend it all on drugs and drinking. Well, like, okay, well, just give them the money and let them spend it on them, spend it on what you want. I think it's in some ways feels like a really kind of socialist thing, and in other ways it's kind of quite libertarian, because it's giving people the right to just do whatever they want.
Yep.
So it's kind of a real contradiction, but I was a big fan of this, and I thought, this is a way to kind of wipe out equality. People can do more on top of it, but
I think you mean inequality.
Yeah, maybe it was Freudian slip there. Maybe that's what I want to do. Yeah, sorry, wipe out inequality, or at least reduce inequality. But I think giving people a universal basic income, I definitely felt previously, maybe even a month ago, maybe even 2 days ago, that it would be a really, really good way to kind of, set, I guess it's setting a floor, isn't it? So like there's still a ceiling, but it's setting a floor. And if you think about things like anyone who knows like donut economics, the economic model is you've got a floor, and then the environmental thing is you've got a ceiling, and you operate within that area. What I listened to the other day, and it was a 7-minute clip from an episode of DOAC. So DOAC, Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett, is a podcast which I think me and you both kind of, sometimes we think is brilliant. Sometimes it's the clickbaity headlines that annoy me, but he has some really great guests on. Yeah. He had someone on there called Brett Weinstein. And Brett Weinstein he hosts his own podcast, the Dark Horse podcast. He's an evolutionary biologist, very, very clever guy, very controversial. A lot of people call him a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist. I think he's got some controversial views I don't agree with, but like I say, he's very clever. I think he gets it. A lot of stuff I think he probably does get right, and he's willing to say things that I think a lot of people are not willing to say. And he was on the podcast the other day and they talked about UBI, and he said the reason it's never going to work is because it's going to create a huge class of, and I use this term because he used it, and he used it actually in the way of, not his opinion, but it will create a class of useless eaters. People whose life is consuming and not giving anything back to society. And once you start doing that, the people in power, the people who stand to, to lose from that, from, the money that is perceived as being given away to those, in inverted commas, useless eaters. I think, and when he said, and I think at that point, you're sort of incentivizing a depopulation agenda amongst certain groups of powerful people and organizations. And then there's a second aspect to it, which is you take away people's purpose. People's purpose for a long time has been, and it's not necessarily about your job, but it's about doing something where you feel a sense of worth and that you're contributing something, and you take away that as well. And so, as well-meaning as it is, the problem with UBI is it's going to create a subset of society that you then have another group of society, which is people with power and money who look down on and think we need to get rid of this group because they are not contributing anything, but they're taking money and they're using up resources.
There's a movie that I've just pulled up, which this reminds me of quite a lot, which is called In Time with Justin Timberlake. If anyone hasn't seen it, it's basically where in the movie time is you basically people can live forever, but the richest in society have time. Like time is a kind of an analogy for money in this movie, and so you get given a certain amount of time, and once your timer runs out, which is kind of like imprinted on your arm, then you just die. And
yeah, I've seen this. I forgot about this movie.
Yeah,
it's pretty good actually.
Yeah, and what you're talking about just reminded me of this. It's a bit like Hunger Games. It's a bit like all these kinds of movies that explore exactly this kind of concept. In terms of the kind of division between the rich and the wealthy and the poor, and in this case, kind of like, I guess what we're talking about is that divide's going to get even wider, and the rich are just going to get richer and the poor are going to get poorer. And that is the dystopian future version of this. The reason I question this is because I don't think that has to be the only outcome here. Like, I think that the fact that we live in a capitalist system where everything is driven by money, and that's the purpose, that's your purpose in life. I think that's why. I think that's the sort of system that we're in that leads to this natural conclusion that you basically manufacture a situation where actually at the moment we've got the what would you call it, the American dream, I suppose, if that's still alive. We've got the American dream right now where you can still make something of yourself. It doesn't matter what situation you're born into, you can still make something of yourself. Again, importantly, in our capitalist society that we live in right now. Once you implement something like this, assuming that the reason you implement it is because AI takes all the jobs away, and so UBI is the only alternative because otherwise you have a load of people who have nothing, and therefore you're just going to get massive civil unrest and some kind of revolution. So the alternative is something like UBI, because that's I guess that's ultimately what we're talking about, right? And so, but then the problem that stems from that is you create this kind of two-tier system that people can't break out of. All you can do in life is be born into one of those classes or the other, and then you just you're either rich because you've probably inherited money and you're rich and you control the means of capital, or you're on universal basic income for the rest of your life, and that's your situation. But I think this is it's a super dystopian, but also super simplistic kind of version of, it's an extension of the capitalist system we live in today. And my argument against it would be, that there is so much more to life than this, and there's so much more that matters in life. And so, why is, I mean, this is obviously going down the debate of like, should we live in a capitalist world, and what should the next system be? But to be honest, like, people go to work and have a job and do all these things to make money, to make ends meet in a lot of situations. Some people are happy in their jobs. Some people are less happy in their jobs. There's a kind of massive spectrum there. But we're already in that world, in my opinion. It's just that there's a kind of like, in a way, I feel like there's a kind of like we've got a hood drawn over our eyes. We've got blinkers on, because it's kind of like, okay, I'm born, I get educated. The purpose of getting educated is so I can make money, so I can have capital, so I can spend money and be a consumer. This is kind of the capitalist model. It's the same thing. It's just a different means of control. And so if the purpose of my life is to get educated and be a good person and be a happy human being and bring joy to the world and bring joy to other people, what's the problem with that? And so I guess what I'm saying is the whole model, like once you get to the point where you're saying everyone needs to be put on UBI, the whole model needs overhauling. Like money, for the 90%, for the 95%, becomes kind of insignificant and pointless anymore. Like the whole point of the system we have right now is so that, capitalists can make money by having consumers that can spend money and all the rest of it. I guess ultimately what I'm advocating for is the Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek universe. So I definitely have a utopian view on this. I don't know which one's going to happen, but I don't think that the only what was the word? Like unproductive eaters?
Useless eaters.
Useless eaters
is the term, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't see it. Like, and sorry, just to make a final point, like I think, and I don't mean offense to anyone by saying this, but I think for various reasons, whether it's mental health reasons, whether it's like ability reasons, whether it's capability reasons, we have this situation right now, and I definitely wouldn't call them useless eaters, but like, there are a lot of people in that situation right now in a capitalist world where people are unproductive and unhappy and unsatisfied with the situation they're in, and I think it's quite a large amount of people because they can't get the job they want, they can't achieve the things they want to achieve in their life, and so I don't see this kind of dystopian future that we're talking about here as been actually that far away from the situation we're in right now, where not everyone can have what they want, not everyone can have a job that they want. A lot of people are doing things just to make ends meet. A lot of people are on benefits and social services already and don't see a point in like engaging with the system we have right now, and it's not an insignificant amount of people. So yeah, that's my opening gambit.
But I think that's almost it's not an argument against not what I said, what Brett Weinstein said. I mean, I don't know his opinion. I don't think it was a 7-minute clip from a 2.5-hour podcast. I haven't listened to the whole podcast, but on that clip, it didn't give me the impression that he necessarily was saying this is his view. I mean, it's certainly not, my view, but it was his view, and it is my view now. I'm not sure if it was before, but after thinking about this, that is the most likely outcome. Because, like you said, that is the system that we live in. And the first episode of this podcast, I made that kind of statement about the end of capitalism. And I do think the only way that the kind of AI revolution in the long term works in the positive for society is with the end of capitalism as we know it. Because there has to be a different system. Now, it could be a new form of capitalism. Like I said, it's not that it's communism or socialism, because I don't think it's any of the existing systems. They won't work with a potential future in which people do not work, because all those systems, communism is based around the workers. Capitalism is based around the need of, people to generate, people to generate that revenue, people to buy things. They're all based around people working. So if you have a system where people are not being productive, unfortunately, when the power is in the hands of the 1% of people who do have money, if those people are not consuming or producing, then those people are not useful for their world. And so the only way in which I think it can work is that the people, and I'm not talking again in kind of communist, revolutionary terms, but in some kind of revolutionary way, the people rise up against the system. And there is some form of democratization of power which allows for that kind of utopian future. And it's possible, but I think the most likely outcome, if we do not find a way for people to be productive, and we haven't even moved on to the kind of, mental health aspect of feeling like you're contributing to the world, is that without going into the whole conspiracy global cabal thing, that the ruling class who control most power, most of the money, they won't have a benefit. And therefore, I can't see this ending well for humanity.
Well, yeah, and so I didn't talk about how we're going to get there. I don't know how we're going to get there. Maybe it'll be revolution. Maybe it'll be evolution. That would be preferable. But I just had a look, and I'm not saying that systems before capitalism were any better, but like the idea that capitalism is the end of the road is quite sort of, and this is not aimed at you at all, but it is quite narrow-minded in my opinion. It's been around for about 400 years, about 500 years, looking at the sources I'm looking at. Before that, there was feudalism, there was a whole bunch of other systems, slavery and awful things that went on. But I would argue that, if you go back way, way, way back, if you go back tens of thousands of years, productivity hasn't always had the same definition. And I do agree, like, people need things to do, but productivity does not have to equal producing stuff, producing capital, all this kind of things. There is a potential path, there is a potential future, there is a utopia where we find some kind of balance with the climate, where things like AI and robots actually support us and help us out and do the manual things that we need to do, the dangerous things that we need to do, to exist in this world. And people are provided for, and your idea about what your place in the world is and what you do is more about, like, it can be about art, it can be about creativity, it can be about taking care of each other, it can be about a whole bunch of things that we arguably used to do a lot better, I think. So okay, it is super utopian, but I think there is a counter argument there to some of this dystopia stuff. How we get there, I don't know, and possibly there will be massive upheaval, revolution, people losing jobs, leading to massive societal issues and societal upheaval. But I don't think it ends in. I think there's a fork in the road at some point, and you've got this kind of dystopia, utopia possibilities.
Can that utopian world happen in a world with 8 or 10 billion people? Because, and this is where, again, and I don't want to go too far down what will be termed conspiracy or conspiratorial path, but depopulation, I mentioned this word earlier on, but the world that you talk about, I can see that world existing with 1 or 2 billion people, but not with 8 or 10 billion people. And that, I think, is part of the problem. And then for, again, the ruling class, the ruling masses, those corporations, lobbyists, big tech, big oil, big pharma, whatever it is, whoever controls the world, the lizard people, whoever, it's not in their benefit then to have 8-10 billion people in the world, because that is sucking the resources out of the planet and not giving anything back. That's the way that they would see it. So I can see the world that you talk about as a utopia. My concern, and this is why it kind of I agreed with what Brett Weinstein said, but it sent a chill down my spine, because I just connected that with the whole kind of depopulation thing. And again, like, it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but like, follow the money, think about it, apply your logic to it. It makes a hell of a lot of sense. Makes a hell of a lot of sense that the way to get there that would work for the ruling class would be to massively depopulate the planet. And I'm not saying how they're going to do it or how they're doing it. I'm just saying, like, there's a logic that leads that way.
Maybe. I don't know. Like, I think to sustain, well, first of all, like, the population of the world is projected to start declining by the end of this century anyway. Naturally, let's just say naturally, it's projected to start declining anyway. We're getting into subjects sort of like around climate change and whether we are, whether we're able to continue using the resources available in the world in the way we are, or whether we're already using 2 or 3 Earths worth of resources, and there's a whole bunch of debate around that. I personally, I think fundamentally, without the advent of some kind of new technology that can support the amount of people we have on the planet, I think we're probably already past that limit. That being said, I don't know if that kind of technology is around the corner. I think without that, then no, I don't think that Earth is capable of sustaining the amount of people that are on the planet right now and the rate at which we're using natural resources. I don't think that's got any, necessarily has to be linked to some kind of depopulation agenda. I think that's just, well, again, it's my opinion, but based on stuff that I've seen, I think it's just a fact. That being said, as I said, technology is incredible, and who's to say that, like nuclear fusion or something like that, who's to say that won't actually, and this kind of thing's been benefited by AI already, coming back to AI in terms of the podcast, so who's to say that there won't be a technological advancement in the next few years that means we can reduce our reliance upon oil, we can actually turn things around, and the planet can support much more people. So I think that's an open question. I genuinely don't think that's linked to some kind of depopulation agenda, or has to be, because it's kind of a fairly established fact at this point that we're using the planet up faster than it can replenish itself. And that's where, it kind of comes into climate change and all this kind of stuff.
Should we lighten things up with another rap battle?
Yeah, that's been pretty intense. It's only 27 minutes in.
Yo, Jimmy, you delusional Silicon Valley fool. You tech loving ass about to end up in a pool of obsolete humans left for dead, while you worship false gods inside your thick head. We're headed for hell, you ignorant prick. Useless eaters all makes me fucking sick. Your rosy future's trash, we're all getting canned, replaced by machines. Get your head out of the sand. Shut your trap, Matt, you paranoid waste. Your gutless fears got a bitter ass taste. You're choking on doom while I'm spitting the truth. AI's our ticket to eternal youth. We're breaking the chains of your corporocratic prison, while your small mind can't even fucking envision a world beyond greed, beyond punch clock slavery. So step aside, fool, let me school you on bravery. Bravery? You're a coward hiding from facts. Your brave new world is a house of cards and cracks. Under the weight of your dipshit delusions, we're fucked 6 ways, no room for illusions. Humans are trash, and soon we'll be trashed. Our purpose deleted, our spirits all smashed. You're high on hopium, ODing on dreams, while I'm facing the nightmare of AI regimes. Your nightmare's a joke, you fear-mongering hack. Your brain's been hijacked, time to take it back. AI's not the boogeyman, it's our fucking salvation. From mind-numbing jobs and your shit resignation, we'll create for the hell of it, cause that's what we do. Not wait slaves like you with your pea-brain view. Post-capitalist paradise, that's what I'm preaching, while you're stuck in the mud, always whining and screeching. Paradise? More like a digital zoo. Humans neutered and caged with fuck all to do. No skills, no purpose, just drooling consumers. Our autonomy stripped by AI's maneuvers. You're drunk on a techno-utopian lie. Open your eyes, we're all gonna die. relevance fades, you future drunk simper. Die, hell no, we're about to evolve. While you're too goddamn debts to resolve. Your addiction to misery, your fetish for doom. Get off your ass, there's plenty of room. In a world where we're more than our fucking net worth, where we create and explore, give ideas birth. Your crisis is bullshit, a figment of phantom. So pull your head out your ass and let's quantum leap into a future where we're truly alive. Not just worker drones in your capitalist hive. AI's the key, not the lock on our cage. So flip your perspective and turn the page on your sad little story of humans undone. Cause our real story's only just begun.
Yeah, that was intense. Should we have a look at a few alternative models? I don't know how realistic these are, but I mean, let's just go through a few. So the first one is democratic socialism of AI. So this is a model where AI emphasizes collective ownership and democratic control over AI technologies. It would prioritize public good over corporate profit and ensure the benefits of AI advancement are shared equitably across societies. It would aim to prevent monopolistic practices and the concentration of wealth among tech giants. So this would definitely be a model that would use open source AI, as you're a big advocate for, mate. And policies that compensate individuals for use of their data, recognizing that AI systems are built on our collective human knowledge and therefore we should benefit from all the rewards of it. It would foster a more equitable distribution of resources and decision-making power, and of course would seek to create an inclusive society where digital technology serves the need of all citizens. Sounds great. Never going to happen.
Again, like this is a kind of path towards some of the stuff I was talking about earlier on. I think that it's unlikely to happen sort of naturally, I suppose, but a lot of it sounds very sensible to me. I don't really see what in that is not sensible. And again, we're talking about a.
Why are we not doing this then? Because I agree with you, but like the point is, like, it all seems sensible, and apparently we all, this is what we all want. But what are we like? What the fuck are we doing about it? Are we not doing enough, or is it just that we have no power? Because going back to like the whole AI thing, and I've mentioned this more and more over the weeks, but like, who's asked for this? Like, if we ask people, like, we're in a democracy apparently. Well, we're from a democracy apparently. Who's asked for this, right? Who gets a choice? What about if we just want to shut it all down now? What if we don't want AI? What if we don't want it to replace our jobs? Do we have any view? Like, that for me is like the fundamental of a democratic system. It's not a democratic system because we don't have any right to do this. And so all these, it's great. We talk about, this utopian future, and it is possible. But we're not doing anything about it. And why are we not doing anything about it? Because we feel we have no power. And I don't know if we do have no power, and it's just inevitable because, big tech, big pharma, all of the lobbyists and, DARPA and the DOD and whatever, they rule the world, the CIA, the FBI, whatever. They all rule things, and so we have no rights. Or are we just being too weak? Are we just not standing up? Are people not standing up for what they want? If everybody, let's take the UK, if 50 million people got out in the street tomorrow, would it change things? What if 200 million people in America went out in the streets? If this isn't what people want, what's the answer? Because I feel like a lot of your arguments, I completely agree with you, but it's like the reason why it's not going to happen is because people are not going to do anything about it. Are they not going to do anything about it because they don't have any power and they've just given up? Or they're not going to do anything about it because we just don't have the drive and the motivation to make that change? Like, that's how revolutions happen, right?
Yeah,
people rose up.
I don't think it's got anything to do with either of those things. I think it's that in the countries you're talking about, most people are generally happy enough with their situation that they don't want to have a revolution, because that's, like a revolution is the point at which you become so dissatisfied with your situation that a revolution's better than the alternative. And people just aren't in that situation, right? So, and that's, That's part.
How much further? Like, I don't get the impression people are that happy. Like, how much further do they need to go?
I think they need to go a hell of a lot further. If you look at like what the causes of things like revolution are in the past, it's not like I can't afford the latest plasma telly, which is the situation we're in right now.
Well, no, we're in the situation now that people can't get choosing between whether they eat or whether they put their heating on. So I think it is a lot more extreme than that.
Okay, that was a bad take.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the situation for the majority of the population. It's becoming worse, but I don't think that is the situation for the majority of the population. And it is getting worse. And maybe, and there probably will be in the next few years more instances, unfortunately, of kind of social unrest and that kind of thing. And we'll see where that goes. But I just don't think we're kind of rock bottom yet in that sense. That's where
it's quite depressing that we're not at rock bottom yet. I was hoping we were at rock bottom on our way up.
Well, hopefully we are, and in that case, it kind of like demonstrates the whole point about the way the system works, right? Because okay, despite all the things that we've talked about today, and like it's been a bit of a depressing episode, like actually the government does work in your favor in a lot of cases, and that is the whole point of the government. And so, the idea that we've never been in this situation before, like we've had the Great Depression before, we've had other situations before that are kind of, probably worse or slightly worse than the situation we're in right now. And you're right, like if it gets really, really bad, and this is the problem with AI, right, is that there is a danger that we stumble into a situation in the next couple of years where we're actually in a really bad state right now. And then you end up in a situation where AI can start actually taking people's jobs and robots can start taking people's jobs. And then things will relatively quickly unravel at that point, in my opinion. Like, it won't take long. It won't take long if we blunder blindly into a situation where AI is taking jobs wholesale, where it causes massive civil and social unrest. And then, maybe we will end up in some of those kind of situations.
Let's explore another model rather than go too far down the hole. So this one's called AI Enhanced Cooperative Economies. So this is where the economy basically leverages AI technologies to support cooperative business models where workers have a stake in the enterprise. They use AI to facilitate collaboration and resource sharing, foster a more equitable economic environment. It encourages community engagement, empowers workers by giving them a voice in how AI is implemented in their workplace, promoting a sustainable economy that prioritizes the well-being of its members. Sounds to me like this is more of a kind of micro level thing, so within specific businesses rather than in society as a whole. I also think it's kind of wishful pie in the sky.
The biggest problem I have with this, straight off the bat, is that all of the frontier models are in America. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
So how do you implement this? Because, and this is, it comes back to the open source thing, like the faster, the quicker we can get to the point where this kind of technology is actually available to everybody and they're not paying,
Well, I guess it's how you implement it in the workforce rather than development of the model, right?
Well, yeah, but the way things are right now, all of the benefits of AI and all the economic benefits of it are going to get funneled into companies in the US. If we're all reliant on companies in the US that actually run these models, that's where all the benefits are going to go. Instead of paying a worker, you're going to be paying OpenAI to replace your workers. And so, I think that's my whole point around this. And there's loads of ways around that. And the companies that implement this are still going to get an economic benefit. So I suppose you can still come back to that. But I feel like you need a massive democratization of AI and AI models and the actual sort of power behind AI alongside this at the very least.
Yeah, we haven't done it before now, without AI. It feels like we're talking about AI here, but why is it any different from from I mean I guess even like the Labour Party in the UK did talk about this idea of, you know, kind of shared ownership, where percentage of ownership of businesses was given over to workers. You know, other countries have had it. Obviously, you know, communist countries, more socialist countries have had similar kind of things in the past that haven't necessarily worked out. But I don't think it's something completely new. But yeah, I agree with you. It's also just not realistic, and it's not macro enough. Like the thing about a UBI that does work is that it's done on a big scale. I think the only way you have something that works is you simplify it as much as possible. This to me sounds, you know, it's too complex. Let's do one more potential model. So this one's called the data dividend model. And a data dividend model. So basically this compensates individuals for the data they generate and share with AI companies. I think the boat's already sailed because, you know, all of our data has already been shared. But it recognizes that personal information is a communal resource. Data dividends mean companies would pay users being who, I don't know if that's the whole world or just their, you know, citizens of that nation, for their contribution. They encourage responsible data usage, foster a shared sense of ownership amongst individuals. This approach helps address issues of privacy and exploitation, ensuring economic benefits of AI advancement are distributed equitably along society, that promotes fairness and accountability in AI development. These all kind of sound the same to me. Like just variations. Like UBI is the only one that at least feels like it kind of feels semi-feasible.
I mean, how true is the soundbite that information is power in the world?
Well, now it is,
yeah.
Information is like data's the new oil, right?
It's mad because things almost happened in the perfect order, where actually the internet came about. If AI had come around before the internet and in some mad sort of alternative reality, then I think we would have recognized this a lot earlier on. And there's, you know, obviously a lot of people have said for a long time information is power, but the sort of natural way things evolve, where we got the internet in the 90s, and then we got all the means of leveraging data out of people in the time in between. So you kind of got much better smartphones, you got social media, you got all these kinds of things. And then AI comes on the scene, and it's like, right, now we can just suck up all that data and actually like really turn it into something really powerful, potentially something that like will become more powerful than us, which is absolutely mad. AI super intelligence based on Facebook posts is going to be pretty wild. But yeah, like this. Sorry, I feel like I've
I feel like if it's based on Facebook posts, at least that'd be better than being based on Twitter and Reddit. So Facebook's not the worst case scenario.
Yeah, not anymore. I mean, you've hit on something there. Like you mentioned Reddit, like so, and I think Twitter did the same thing. So pretty soon after AI really started to come on the scene, and we realized the power of this information, Reddit and Twitter, they started like locking down their APIs and started charging money for them, because they realized how much of a gold mine the information they had was. The thing you're talking about there is taking that to the next level, where it's actually, you know, benefiting the user or benefiting the supplier of the information in some way. And as you say, like all those people who've been contributing to Wikipedia over the years and posting on Reddit and all the social media channels and putting all this information out there on the web for free, they've kind of just been taken advantage of over the years, and the latest iteration of that is AI, and how it can just scoop up all that data and absorb it, and then you know, generate wealth for the companies that produce these AIs. But I totally agree. The ship has sailed, 20 years ago, maybe even 30 years ago, in the sense of this model that you're talking about. And I don't see that's ever going to happen. It seems the most unrealistic of any of the things that the models that you've discussed, because we gave away our information for free a long time ago.
I think about about 2017, maybe slightly earlier than I think, 2017, when in China in particular, where they started introducing the shared bikes, right? And when they first started introducing them, they were they were everywhere. Like, it's almost impossible for people who were not in China to imagine in any city, there were buses couldn't get into bus stops. There were just bikes everywhere, and a new company were on the scene every week. And you couldn't understand at the time how they were making any money and they weren't making any money. They were making a loss, but the thing that they were developing is just masses and masses of data, right, around where people were moving. So you could see from this tube station to this building, from this building to this bus stop, whatever, these people go here. Incredible amounts of data. Cities where people maybe, some people are taking 3-4 bikes a day. In a city of 20 million people, maybe 4 million, 5 million people are using those bikes at some point. You might get 20 million journeys a day and creating just enormous amounts of data. And at that time, I don't think we understood. It shows it's not long ago, that this data started being created. I mean, there's the stats around how much data in the world, 50% was in the last year or 2 years. And it's just, becoming exponentially more and more weighted in favor of the current year or the current couple of years. But all of that data is being created. Uber, when they started driving, loads of companies like that, deliveries, that data, no one knew how valuable it was. And that's only 6 years ago, 7 years ago. So it's incredible, really, how the world has changed and how data has become so important. And you're right, we've given away our data, but in a way, like, when people were posting on social media, was the intention, I'm going to steal your data? Or is it just at some point someone went, hey, we've got this treasure trove of data? I mean, what came first?
So
I'm not trying to sort of apologize for big tech here. I'm never going to apologize on their behalf, but I do wonder whether there was actually any intent to that. I think the data was there, and then someone realized the value of it.
Yeah, but that was quite a while ago. I mean, Google long ago realized how they could leverage data on where people are, where they're from, all this kind of stuff into AdSense. And I mean, who knows what kind of data has been captured, whether it's been captured from the microphone of your phone that you've got next to you, or all sorts of things, like where targeted advertising is worth a lot of money because we live in that world. We live in that kind of consumer world. So yeah, like, I think the overall point, coming back to this model you were talking about, is that the ship sailed so long ago. Whether it was, I think the way you're right, like the way we have ended up where we are, it was kind of like a natural evolution rather than it was all these companies set out in the first place in the, when MySpace was a thing. They set out to capture people's data, but that's the world we live in now. And I don't see anytime soon that that's going to become democratized or people are going to get rewarded for the data that they're providing.
Let's end with a question then, which is, do we need a new social model at all? Or can we actually just find different jobs for people to do?
Depends what you mean by a job. Like, my view is yes, long term, we probably do need a different social model with a lot of caveats and a lot of assumptions built in. So if we're going to predicate this with AI is going to be able to more efficiently do most of the jobs that exist right now in terms of white collar jobs. Potentially robots in the future are going to be able to take a lot of the rest of the jobs. Then, self-driving cars taking millions and millions of jobs from drivers, things like that, which I don't really see how. My personal view is, okay, some of these things might take longer to arrive than Elon Musk thinks they do, or thinks they will, but they will arrive. And so if that's the future we're heading to, and that's the caveat, then we need to find a different definition. For me, I wouldn't even call it a job. We need to find a different definition of what it means to be, a productive human.
Not a useless eater.
Not a useless eater, exactly.
But I guess my point, I'm just thinking about this now, is why, just because AI is more efficient and able to do things cheaper and quicker, why does that then have to be the answer? I mean, I'm trying to think of examples. Like, there are ways in which you can create, you can produce food quicker and cheaper, but not everyone's buying that thing. There are ways that you can do a lot of things quicker and cheaper. It doesn't mean you have to choose that way. I mean, is there still an element of choice to this?
Yeah. So, and again, it comes into like, okay, assuming we're living in the confines of a capitalist world, then yes, people will potentially pay money for human art. People will pay money for maybe human produced goods in the future, like artisanal food products, like I say, art. But it's going to become increasingly marginalized, even if those are still jobs. Like, not everyone, I think we can both agree that like not everyone's going to become an artist, not everyone's going to become a creative or a writer or a whatever. So it's kind of like, what do you want to do with your life? I mean, personally, I would probably experiment. I'd probably try a bunch of different stuff that I haven't got the time to do now because I have a full-time job. So that takes up like a significant part of my day, and then the rest of my day I'm doing things that I do in my leisure time, because that's kind of like the system we have, right?
I'm thinking, like, let's say that you like playing squash.
Yeah, which I do.
Well, let's just say, I mean, I was just throwing that out there. I never knew that you like squash, but let's say you like playing squash, but you're not going to pay for squash because you don't have any money. What's the incentive for me to even have a squash court?
Why? Well, but I thought we were talking about in a world where, we had something like UBI, so I would have the means to go and play squash still.
I'm thinking out loud here. I'm just thinking, like, does the money have any value? Like, again, who creates a squash court? The people with power who want to generate revenue from it. But if you don't have enough money, what's the point in us creating the squash court? I mean, that's what I'm thinking is, like, you have to have, and again, it comes back to being in this capitalist model, is there has to be something there that someone has to be benefiting from for them to create it for you in the first place. So we need a system that allows us to create things. And I guess this requires, governments that are well-intentioned, that care about their people, to really create those kind of structures and to really ensure that some of the benefits, because it's, I think we're being realistic here, it's not all of the benefits. Like, a lot of the benefits are going to go to a small proportion of people and organizations, but at least some of those benefits do go further down the chain to society, and they are used to make sure there are, facilities and things for people to do and to use that free time.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, like, I struggle to find the difference between that and the situation we're in right now, where, and I don't mean to sound negative, but like, a lot of people go to work and do the things a lot of people are really satisfied at work and go to work and enjoy doing what they're doing at work. But there are also a lot of people who go to work just to go to work so that they can enjoy themselves outside of work, on the weekends, in the evenings, whatever it is. There are a lot of people in that situation. And so what's the difference between this future where, people just get supported to do the things they want to do versus they have to go and do a job they don't want to do so they can do the things they want to do? Like, I don't see the difference in a way.
I want to end the podcast on a fairly positive note, because I've just listened to what you said, and I think it actually brings me back to one of the earlier episodes. It may again have been the Utopia episode, where we talked about how the potential is that we raise the floor and we lower the ceiling, which in itself reduces inequality. And I think what you've just talked about is exactly that. The people who are at the very, very top with power and wealth, they will, I'm sure, whatever happens in an AI, an AI powered future, they will become more rich and more powerful. But for the rest of us, for those who are near the top, so those who have jobs which are highly motivating for them and which, they feel a really big, important part of society, they may suffer a drop in terms of their self-importance, and in terms of their income, because they will, like relative to society, they will be less wealthy. But those at the bottom will hopefully be dragged up. And then if you look at the happiest societies in the world, which often comes out as, Scandinavia, Northern European countries which tend to have, high levels of tax, they have less inequality. The rich are less rich, but the poor are less poor. They're countries with not great weather, with, it gets dark at 2:00 in the afternoon in winter, high suicide rates, but yet most people are happy. Maybe the kind of utopia is not the utopia that we think about, which is, everything is amazing and we can just do whatever we want all the time. But it's a world in which we squeeze that gap and we lower the ceiling for some people, but we raise the floor. And we have most of society operating in a world in which no one's in absolute poverty. Very few people are in any form of poverty, but maybe some of the people who were in the top sort of 25th percentile are kind of dragged down a little bit to a more equal society.
100%.
And on that note, we will conclude this week's podcast. We will play you out with a beautiful piece of music, and we will look forward to seeing you all again next week. John Cleese.
Copper coins rain like acid from the sky. Fat cats laugh as our spirits die. We spit useless eaters from the towers of greed, while we choke on their trickle-down creed. This ain't no freedom, it's a fucking cage where the rats they've trapped on a minimum wage. They preach gratitude while we scrape and starve in this basic income hellhole our souls they carve. More like basic prison. False hope dealing, they knew what they were given. Rich bastards sneering from behind golden bars at us, rotting in abandoned strip mall scars. This ain't no freedom, it's a fucking cage where the rats they've trapped on a minimum wage. They preach gratitude while we scrape and starve in this basic income hellhole our souls they carve. Nothing, free to slowly die, free to watch our dreams turn to lie. We're the walking dead, no purpose, no pride. A generation they'd rather just hide. They thought they'd shut us up with their blood money, but they can't buy the rage that's burning honey. We're stuck in their game, pawns on their board, alive but not living, we're fucking ignored. tuer, c'est de la merde. On crève lentement dans ce désert vert. Les riches nous traitent comme du bétail inutile. Notre colère gronde, elle n'est pas futile. This ain't no freedom, it's a fucking cage with the rats they've trapped on a minimum wage. They